Hi everybody, this is Julie Bean with Beadaholique, and I have a little bit of a different video for you today. Today we're going to talk about the design process and how you can design for yourself a modern color block fringe earring. So I have an example of my finished earrings. So this is what they look like, and you can see that they're a matched pair. And they have a color block pattern to them. You see that we kind of got this more modern geometric feel to them. And I want to show you how you can achieve that for yourself so you can make a lot of variations and make whatever you want to make for your own designs. So I'm going to walk you through the process. And like I said, this is a little bit of a different video for us, so I will go through it the best I can of how I came up with this design. So what you're first going to need is to choose your beads. So I first chose my color palette and my beads. So I picked 11 Eau Delicas in 3 colors, and I chose colors that would pop against each other. So if you've done a lot of bead weaving or loom work before, you know how important it is that you really have a lot of contrast. So if you had, say, 3 different tones of green, it might all blend together. You might not really see your pattern very well. Same thing if you had maybe a white, a cream, and like a light brown or something like that. It might not show up very well. But this here, these are nice and contrasty. They got a lot of difference in them. When you look at them, you can see the different colors. So I've got the gold, the green, and the cream. And then what you're going to need to do is to think about what your pattern is that you're gonna want to do and how big you're gonna want your earrings to be. So I had in my mind that I wanted this kind of this earring that would be a little bit more modern. I knew I wanted more of a rectangular top, and I wanted a fringe base, and I knew I wanted to come to a point at the bottom. So that meant I was gonna have to use odd count, because the only way to get a point at the base of your beadwork is to use odd count. So I know I wanted an odd number of rows. So what I came up with was this for my design. And this is actually my little sketch. Not fantastic, but it worked. And I basically, at first here, I started doing this. I knew the basic shape I wanted. I wanted, this was gonna be the top rectangle, and then this was gonna be the fringe part of it. And here I started out and was way too busy. I realized that this was just not gonna look good. So I went for a little bit more of a wider lines, a little chunkier pattern. And I just drew it out. So I'm gonna show you what I did and show you that you can do really whatever you want. So I picked a color for each of my beads. So for the green beads, I have a green color. For the gold, I don't have a gold pencil, so I went with an orange. And then for the cream, I needed something that would show up on my paper, so I went with a yellow. So you could pick whatever you want. I do think it's important that you can easily see your colors. So I knew that I wanted basically kind of that rectangular top, which would be like that. And then I knew I was going to do fringe off of it, like that. And I knew I wanted it to kind of end in like a point. I knew for the draping, I wanted that to happen. So essentially the shape I have for my pattern looks something like this. Okay, so that is the basic shape of the beadwork. And then I just started to make some shapes. And you can do this however you want. You can be like, wow, I think I'd like to have a nice thick stripe here. And then maybe you even want a diamond shape there, or half diamond. I guess half diamond is triangle. And then maybe you want a band down here. Again, this does not have to be perfect, and you can just have fun with it. And then here, you can just color in, maybe you want, this was the gold, so you could do gold here. Maybe you want gold all the way down here. And you notice this is not matching the one I had already. This is just showing you the idea of how you can make these blocks in your basic pattern. And then maybe down here, you're like, well, let's do a nice thick section of cream right here. And then let's do more gold. And you can do 1,000 different variations of this. So, but that was the basic idea to get that color blocking effect. Then what I needed to do was to translate it onto some grid paper so that I could actually have a pattern to follow. So this is what it started like right here. And then what that became were these two things here. And let me show you how I got to them. So if you look at what this earring is, we have peyote up top and we have fringe at the bottom, but fringe is essentially an even lined up grid, which is the same as what loom paper will give you. You see how these are nice straight rows? They're not staggered like you have with peyote. So what you're gonna do is you can print off some loom paper. Now this paper is available at beadaholique.com. It is free. You can just print and download it. So I printed out some blank sheets of the peyote paper that we have. So I've got peyote here, which you see is staggered. You see that these are not in an even row. And then we've got the loom paper as well. So I printed out blank sheets of these. And then what I did is I started with the top, which is the peyote, right here. And what's interesting is I needed it to be flat on the bottom because that is where all my threads are gonna exit to make my fringe. So you see it's flat on the top and then it's got that kind of staggered little look on the side. So in order to achieve that, I actually need to turn my paper sideways. So you see it's now flat at the bottom, flat at the top. And again, I wanted it to be an odd count. So I'd have a center to create a point down at the bottom. So I chose that mine was gonna be 9 beads wide. So I actually just numbered them up here and I drew little guidelines. That really helps me is to draw little guidelines. And then I looked at my original drawing, if I can find where I put that, right here. And if you look, I just started to try to recreate this. So here was gonna be here's the gold. So I made a little section of gold. Each little dot is representing a bead. Then I knew I wanted this nice big diagonal section of green, which is what you see here. And so I have that in my pattern. I went here. And then I knew I wanted to cut it about halfway. So I knew I wanted about halfway down. I wanted gold on one side and I wanted cream on the other. So I started with the gold up top, which again is what I have here in my little sketch. So I started with the gold, which is represented by the orange. And then on the other half, I have the cream beads. And then what I did is when it came time to do the fringe, now the scale is a little off because these little rounds are smaller than these guys. What I did is I finished my topper. Then I went and I drew above where I was gonna start to do my fringe, which is the loom paper, what the last color was. So you see right here, this is where we're at. We're at that area where the peyote connects to the fringe. And so I had gold, 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 cream, 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 green. And that helped to guide me to continue the pattern. So I was able to continue this section of gold all the way down into the fringe work. Same thing with the cream beads. I was able to continue it all the way down. And again, I made myself guidelines. I counted 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 across. I made myself those guidelines so that I could know where I was starting and where I was stopping. And then I just continued with my little sketch, trying to recreate it here. So I've got this triangle right here of green. I have a triangle of green. I have a section at the bottom, a green stripe. I've got my green stripe. And then when we get down to the base, here is gold. And I have an even number of gold beads on each of them. So I should say it's an odd number, it's 3, but it's equal. Each one of my little Fringe Dangles has the same amount of gold at the base. So you'll see what that looks like right here. Okay, so there it creates this nice little V. And then if you look at my beadwork, the last one is what we actually loop back up on. And you can see that that is just at the very tip of it. That's at the very end of it. And we do have tutorials on how to do fringe, how to do peyote bead weaving, all of these different techniques with the actual beadwork. We already have the tutorials on, but for this one, I really wanted to show you the design process so that you could create your own patterns and your own designs, because that's really a lot of fun. So let me continue here. And then I just made sure that what I did for this base on one side, I did on the other side, so it was nice and even. And then we have our center line right here. So this was the center of our pattern. And that was it. That was how I came up with this design. This is how I started. I started first with this one, which was too busy. I simplified it a little bit so I had nice big color blocks. I had picked out my beads, and you can look here because it can be you're like, wow, it can be like, this is going to be a huge earring. Look how much work this is. Look at how big this is. And they're not actually all that big at the end of the day. I actually thought that they were going to be quite a bit longer and larger because these little ovals are just so much bigger than an actual size 11-0 delicate bead. But this is how it came about, and this is what I did. I made sure I gave myself the little cues that I needed. That was very helpful, numbering my rows, making my guidelines, and just continuing on with the loom paper at the bottom for the fringe, the peyote paper at the top. Again, make sure if you are going to do this type of design where you want that straight edge, and you do need it if your fringe is going to come out the bottom, take your peyote paper, turn it on the side so you get that nice line at the base. So I hope you enjoyed this design process, kind of walk-through tutorial. If you did, please let me know in the comments and I will create more of them if this was a type of video that you find useful and you'd like to see more of. And then we do have all the ingredients for these and links to the videos on how to do the actual bead weaving for these over at beadaholique.com, and we'll make sure we provide links for you for all of that. Thanks, everyone.